So our speaker tonight is Judy Spear. She is one of the founders and directors of Small Waters Education Center in Alden, over by Harvard, which is a beautiful place. I've been there. Along, is it Nippersink Creek?
We're at the headwaters
of Nippersink Creek. So they promote mutually beneficial relationships between humans and the rest of the natural world through experiences in ecological restoration, permaculture, and deep ecology. And she and her husband, Jack, have been working on basically restoring old savanna on the property. And she's going to tell you about what they've learned over the years from that. So please welcome Judy Spear.
Thank you so much, Jerry. And thank you all for coming. This is a great crowd and very happy to share our stories. And this is adventures. You know, when we started this idea of the food forest, we didn't know, of course, how it was going to turn out. This was all new to us. And so we learned a lot of things the hard way. And so that's why I want to share our ups and downs, successes and failures with you all. So, and experiments, and so that we can learn from each other. So let's start by just saying, what is a food forest? Another way of saying it is forest gardening. You might hear that term as well. If it's on a commercial level, it'll be called agroforestry. But it's a method of cultivating food using trees, shrubs, perennials, forbs, inspired by a forest ecosystem. So putting together your garden so that it works together like a forest ecosystem does, and also that you are able to harvest food from it. And just to give you context, this is a little bit of what Jerry was talking about. Jack and I lived for the first 20 years of our marriage in Chicago. We're city folk. And then life changes happened and we were ready for something new. And one of the ideas we had was to not only get a little bit of land in a rural area, but something that had some natural value to it so that we could preserve it, that we could restore it, we could save it from getting destroyed, because we were seeing beautiful natural land all around us, all around the city area being destroyed. So we looked around a whole 150-mile radius all around Chicago. And we kind of zeroed in on McHenry County. It just really attracted us. And we ended up in beautiful Alden, Illinois. It's near Harvard. And the red arrow here, I don't know if this really helps it on. No, it would help to turn it on. That's what would help, to turn on this laser. So as you can see, this is the Wisconsin-Illinois border, and this little green area here is the Alden Sedge Meadow that is owned and managed by the Conservation District of McHenry County, McHenry County Conservation District. It's not open to the public, but it's the beginning of the Nippersink Creek. These tributaries over here all come together, and this is where the Nippersink Creek starts. And now it is also part of Hackmatack National Wildlife Refuge, because that is a grassroots effort that started 20 years ago to knit all of these natural areas together in the Nippersink watershed. And so that is happening now. And so it's really cool that we could say that we are part of Hackmatack as well. Let's see, what else can I say about this? So anyway, yeah, so we moved here in 2002, and it's 7 acres right adjacent to the conservation area. Okay. And we, in a few years, we were able to set up our nonprofit Small Waters Education. And we took the name Small Waters because Nippersink is the indigenous term that means the place of the small waters. And it refers to the creek, the streams, the seeps, the springs that all along the course of the Nippersink Creek feed it. So then it just seemed natural. And that spiral logo is sort of the map, you know, how the different tributaries come together behind our home. Oh, I'm using the wrong thing here. All right. And we come from a lot of different threads of inspiration too. So I want to go over a couple of these things because it's many layered, you know, the things that we've been interested in. We're not experts at any of it. We don't have degrees in any of it. But it has inspired us. It has sparked our passion, and it's the reason why we decided to do this food forest. So I'll go through each one briefly. Permaculture is a system for designing sustainable human landscapes using nature's patterns. So it's sort of a way of organizing your thoughts so that you can design in a real holistic and energy efficient and sustainable way. I like it because it uses different ways of knowing. It draws from not only science, but also traditional wisdom, you know, indigenous ways of knowing, and direct observation. So these all together provide us with a real powerful way of determining our path. And there's a lot of principles that permaculture design method teaches that can be used like tools in a toolbox. And I'll be kind of peppering the rest of my talk with a little bit of these principles here and there to kind of illustrate why we chose to do a certain thing. So I'll bring up that permaculture principle tool. And then we also got involved with ecological restoration. We started learning about it when we still lived in Chicago, and when we moved to our place that we call Small Waters, we signed up right away to be volunteer site stewards with the Conservation District to restore the oak savanna on their land adjacent to ours. And we're also doing some restoration on our land as well. So we learned about removing invasive brush, and we learned about prescription burning, how valuable that is. We learned also about working with volunteers in restoring the diversity of the native plants of the oak savanna ecosystem, which is actually globally endangered. There's only a tiny, tiny fraction of it left in the Midwest. We have been inspired and really strongly active in the movement to get native plants into our human and neighborhood landscapes. So native plant gardening, I've been a gardener forever since I was a little kid. And when I first planted a couple of native plants in my little yard in Chicago and the dragonflies and birds showed up, it just hooked me right away. And so we continued doing that when we moved to Alden. And now Small Waters Education, one of the things we do is to help schools and parks, other public places, to put native plant gardens into their landscapes. And this is a school in McHenry. I know I've just met somebody here who lived in McHenry. This is Landmark School. We helped them plant a native garden last year, and they use it as a classroom, outdoor classroom. It goes. Okay, great. Thank you. And then we're also influenced a lot by deep ecology, which is a philosophy, but it's also just a way of looking at one's place in the universe, that we're a part of the story, that we belong to this amazing and multi-layered and multi-dimensional universe that we have a part in. We do have a part in the system. We're not off in some other realm. We're not meant to be, you know, on the outside looking in. We emerged from it, and we have a place in it, and finding our place in this ecosystem has been one of the things that has driven Small Waters Education to explore more deeply and just to experience on different levels, not just our brains, but our hearts, our bodies, our souls, our spirits. And of course, we also honor the wisdom of the people who carry the knowledge of this land and who know how to live in a mutually beneficial way with the other beings, other than human beings that live here. And so we acknowledge that, and we try to learn whatever it is that they'd like to share about the ways that have sustained and grown their people for centuries and millennia. And we've been influenced by community building. That's the way we get things done. That's how we knit ourselves into the human community and learn from each other and get new ideas and share what we know. So here we are in our new 7 acres, right? From a tiny postage stamp lot in Chicago to 7 acres. Oh my gosh, what are we gonna do? So we made a map of everything, and we got excited about the idea of doing a forest garden or food forest, because a few years after we moved in 2006, I took the permaculture design course and I got the certificate, and that's what they were all talking about, was, you know, gardening with perennials, trees and shrubs and all that. So I thought, okay, where can we put a food forest here? And it made sense to me at the time that these pear trees back here that were already there, we knew how to eat pears, right? We're familiar with that as food. So let's make that into a food forest. And so it was lawn underneath. We smothered the lawn with some, I think we used cardboard wood chips, and we planted a whole variety of seeds and bulbs of garlic and herbs and flowers and horseradish and just anything that we thought of that we'd want to eat and that, you know, could make it into a nice garden. And it was pretty nice for a couple of years, but because, as you might have seen on that map, it's not all that close to the house. We couldn't see it every day. And so it was really easy to be out of sight, out of mind, right? So this was a violation of the permaculture zone principle, that you should, you should, if something needs attention, you should put it closer to your house so you actually see it. So this is what it looked like in a few years. The grass all came back. You know, we couldn't keep it as tidy as we thought we could. And it's just, you know, a lot more to take care of than a city lot. So we were in over our heads. So we had to rethink, right? And we were learning about the oak savanna restoration and restoration methods at the time. And so we thought, well, okay, these native plants, they already know how to live together, right? They have these communities that are been co-evolved. And so maybe we could use that for a pattern, and maybe we could use some of the techniques that we've been learning with restoration a little bit with creating a food forest. So here's our second attempt. We decided, well, we've got this really ugly right next to our driveway, so we see it every day. And it was all mulberry and boxelder and buckthorn with only 4 species of weeds underneath and nothing else. So we thought, why not transform that? And it was, you know, it's a pretty big space, almost 1/3 of an acre. But we thought, well, dream big, right? Let's see what we can do. So we actually got help from an intern that spring. This was in 2009 when Bobby and Jack, got out the chainsaws and cut this all down. We herbicided the stumps. And in the meantime, we honed our vision. What do we want this food forest to do? And this is a really good thing to do before starting on any project, right? So we spelled it out. We wanted native plants for a healthy and diverse ecosystem. We wanted to bring back the wildlife, the insects, the birds, all the critters that could not live in that thicket of invasives. We wanted it to be compatible with the adjacent conservation area. No species that were going to escape and cause problems in the oak savanna. We wanted it to be beautiful. So yeah, maybe it wouldn't be really manicured. If we lived in a suburban subdivision, we would design it differently. It'd be a lot smaller and manicured, but it's beautiful in its own way. We wanted it to be low maintenance. And we wanted it to be a place where we could connect more deeply with the earth, where we could interact with it and see a lot of changes going on throughout seasons and just learn what was going on. We wanted to be able to share the harvest with other species. We knew we didn't have a choice about that. We would have to do that anyway. So why not do it willingly? And share the adventure of learning with other humans. We wanted this to be a community involved effort. So we also were learning from some permaculture teachers, and this was one of the books that I found really helpful. It's actually a 2-volume set by Dave Jackie and Eric Tonesmeyer, and they put forth a lot of things in these books, but one of the things that really guided us was the principle of diversity, that's how nature works, that's how what makes nature resilient, what makes natural ecosystems resilient. So if you have different plant types, okay, you got trees, you got shrubs, forbs, grasses, vines, you get different root patterns, different, you could plant things close together if they have different ways of sending out their roots, and then they all take up the space underground. Different harvest times is really helpful. Then you're not all inundated with the harvest at the same time and having to collect and process it. So we came up with a design. This is like nothing like the way it looks now, but you got to start somewhere. And we thought, what kind of trees and shrubs do we want? What kind of crops do we want to grow? And, this is a little different from our first attempt with the pears, right? Because, you could buy pears in the store, but native fruits, native nuts, native berries are sometimes different. And we needed to do more learning on not only where you obtain these plants, but how do you eat them? How do you harvest them? What are they good for? So that was a lovely adventure too. And so we chose, because of our soil, it's well-drained wetland soil in that spot. It's starting to slope down into a sedge meadow area, actually. But it's still very well drained. And so we found, there's an awful lot of food plants that grow in that kind of environment. So we chose butternuts. I had been just learning right at that time, around 2009, about the fact that the butternut canker was infecting the trees in our area. And now it's in the endangered species list in Illinois. But I wanted to plant some just to see how they would do. And because I'd fallen in love with butternut trees, and I found a wild butternut and ate it and thought, this is really good. So then we wanted to try hazelnuts and some pawpaws. This is a very northern range of their native range, but we thought we could try it. We'd heard of other people in the area growing them. Not too many, but we thought we could try. And black chokeberry is another crop that we wanted to grow, and elderberry. So this is how we decided to lay it all out. And so we got to work on that thicket. This is sort of what it looked like. I don't have any real before and after pictures because we were just too busy just wanting to go at it. But this is a nearby thicket that gives you the same idea. You could tell there was not much sunlight reaching the ground layer. So we needed to really take all of that out. And all that wood, some of it we used to heat our house. We have a wood stove and the permaculture principle of energy cycling, trying to keep the energy on your property as much as possible and use what you got. Made a whole lot of sense. So all that buckthorn kept us and our kitty cats warm. And then we got some help from some college groups that came out from Chicago for a weekend here and there to help us out with the planting stage. This was a young woman from DePaul University. Their Echo group came out and helped us plant the butternuts and the shrubs. We planted all the trees and shrubs first, and a lot of them were really small because we couldn't afford, big specimens. But the butternut trees we got were already a few years old. And this is a group from Northeastern Illinois University that came to help lay out the paths. And oh, look at all that lovely Dames rocket that came up after we took down the trees. At the time we thought, oh, it's pretty. We didn't really know too much about it. But I'll tell you more about how it has become part of the food forest and what we're doing with it later. But we also decided to use the permaculture principle of ecological succession, which is work with what you got and know that it's going to be changing over time. So now that we had a lot of sunlight and knew that the shade was going to eventually come in with the trees and shrubs growing, let's take advantage of the sunlight while we had it. So we put in a little area of vegetables closer to the house, and for a couple of years grew some, tomatoes and squash and beans, and, shared it with the groundhogs, of course, and the rabbits, but it was nice. We got a few harvests out of that. And then in the meantime, I started trying to learn what kind of understory plants would go under these trees and shrubs as they grew up that would work. So I ended up going back and forth between these volumes a lot. So the Edible Forest Garden book, which talked about all the functions of all these different plants and how you could use different plants for food and and other things. And then actually I didn't have this version of the Flora of the Chicago region. I used the older version, the Plants of the Chicago Region by Swink and Wilhelm. But it was great because it would talk about what kind of plants would grow in natural areas around butternut trees, for example, or elderberries. So that helped me to find out, okay, these plants know how to get along. So, for example, I came up with an idea for this butternut community that we wanted to plant under the butternuts, and tried to learn what different functions they would have and how they could work together. So the butternut, of course, has the edible nuts, and some grass like silky wild rye would be adapted to butternuts and provide weed control. We wanted to have blooms spring, summer, and fall for the pollinators. Box and purple coneflower, blue stem goldenrod, and then we chose also honewort and cutleaf coneflower because edible leaves grow on those plants. And then gooseberry just kind of pops up by itself on our property, so that's also part of the community. We sometimes have to cut them back and dig some out because they get too plentiful, but they are nice berries, and the birds like them too. So when the butternuts were big enough that we thought we could establish the ground layer underneath, in the meantime, it was just weedy stuff that was coming up. Tall goldenrod, tansy, you name it, the Dames rocket. So we just used the sheet mulch method to establish new plants and fight back the old plants enough to try to give the new plants an edge. So this is how we do it. It doesn't, we didn't use any herbicides or dig out any of these weeds. We just cut them down to the ground, watered the soil thoroughly. We started with a pretty small area around, and we had plugs that we were going to put in of all those other plants, the silky wild rye, the bergamot, the cutleaf coneflower, stuff like that. So we put down cardboard onto the wet soil, wet cardboard too, made sure that they were overlapping, and then spread a couple inches of wood chip mulch. If you have leaf mulch, that works good too. We couldn't obtain any of that, so we used wood chips, and then marked 1 foot apart. And then you move away the mulch from there, cut a hole in the cardboard, just big enough for that plug to go in there, pop the plug right in, and water it in. And in a few years, the woodland phlox was pretty happy. And so were most of the other plants. They took pretty well. And so we would, have to do some weeding because some of those other weeds would come back. But when you plant that close, it really gives, and that cardboard, but before it breaks down, it gives it fights off the weeds pretty well. And there's the cutleaf coneflower and the wild bergamot and the growing butternut. And we do burn because we can. We're in a rural area, and we don't burn right up close to the butternuts. They're not really super fire resistant, but it seems to keep that community healthy. We'll burn on a 3-year rotation. And then as we wanted to expand the ground cover layer around the butternuts, we would enlist the help of the permaculture class from the College of Lake County. They'd come out in the fall and expand the plantings for us. And we tried different plantings too, different types of savanna type plants. And some of them took, some of them didn't. This is a way of experimenting to see what really likes that spot, that kind of sun. As the shade grew, some plants got shaded out and other plants got more happy. So here's another example of a different community of plants that we found pretty successful. We planted a couple of high bush cranberries, the American cranberries, Viburnum trilobum, because we had read somewhere in a book that you could eat them. Well, these particular shrubs do not have really tasty berries. Maybe some other cranberries somewhere else taste really good, but ours don't. We leave them for the birds, but they're gorgeous shrubs anyway. I don't want to take them out. And then we found that the sweetgrass grows really well underneath those. Meadow anemone, common mountain mint, wild senna, and cup plant. So that's a successful community that we have found. The serviceberry community we tried, not so much. This area was a lot sunnier and had a lot more Hungarian brome all around it. So the things that we thought would be good companions for the serviceberry, most of them got engulfed again. After the cardboard broke down, those rhizomes just came right back in. So we're slowly trying to find what plants are tough enough to withstand that area. We'll try different ones. I want to tell you a little bit more about the pawpaws because they're just so cool and so different. And I had never grown a pawpaw before. And we found some seedlings at a nursery from Michigan somewhere that we bought and just put them in all different places because we didn't really know exactly what was a good place to plant a pawpaw. And some of them died, but the few that survived happened to be in the shadier areas, we learned, we observed. And so there were 2 especially that started growing really well under the shade of a big box elder, the one left that we didn't cut down because it was on the edge. And then one day a storm took down the box elder. Luckily, it didn't smash the pawpaw. And then we realized how happy the pawpaw was after that and started blooming. It's like, oh, this is perfect. put the shade on the pawpaws when they're first growing, and then once they get a little bit bigger, take the shade out. And then you can get your fruit. So that's how we learned. So now we do it in a little different manner. We'll just put a cage around the baby pawpaw and let vines that are already there, like the wild cucumber or wild grape, grow up and shade it. And then once it's big enough, we'll just cut all that away and start establishing the community plants by the pawpaws. And we had some help from the conservation leadership interns from the Land Conservancy of McHenry County. We partner with them every summer, and they get like 4 or 5 young people from the area to learn all kinds of different conservation techniques. And so we always bring them to the food forest, and we gave them these hand sides and said, okay, we've got the pawpaws there's fruit on these trees, and pretty soon, you know, this is summertime, and in a couple months they're going to be ripe and they're going to fall down, and we have to be able to find them. So since we don't have a real established and designed community yet under these pawpaws, it's just a lot of weeds. So just cut it all down. So this is called the chop and drop method by permaculturists. It's like you just chop whatever's there, let it lay, it makes a nice mulch, it breaks down. And so this made a nice soft landing for the pawpaws to fall. And then they discovered a bat that was hanging in the pawpaw tree. This bat actually came back for two years. This year he didn't come back. So I miss him, but it was a big excitement. And then last fall, we had another visit from interns. These were from the Student Conservation Association, based in Morton Arboretum outside Chicago. So they wanted to come out and get some experience with food forestry. And so then I obtained some plants that I thought would make a good pawpaw community underneath the trees. So that includes ostrich fern and foul manna grass, common blue violet, and wild strawberry. And I do want to make room for some spice bush there too. That would be an excellent companion to that community. So it remains to be seen whether those aren't quite established yet. We're still fighting the weeds there, but once they do, I'm hoping that that'll make a nice soft landing for the pawpaws when they fall. And this is the newest experiment I'm doing. So this is sort of an alternative method to the cardboard and wood chip sheet mulch method, right? But this takes longer. I'm eager to find out how it works because it's supposed to work against some of the nastiest weeds you got. This is another pawpaw tree in another part of the garden. That's the tree. It hasn't quite borne fruit yet. And right next to it, there's an area of reed canary grass, periwinkle, Canada goldenrod, some really tough stuff. And a friend of ours said that he tried this and it killed all of those things. But you got to have green wood chips, like you ask your local arborist when they cut down a live tree, come and drop it right away. Drop the wood chips by you. And then you got to pile them up 1.5 feet at least, and let it sit for at least a year. So that's a big commitment, but it's sort of new on the scene. I haven't heard about this before, but there is some research behind it that is showing some promise as a way of preparing a space for planting without using herbicides. And this is supposed to break down enough in 1.5 years or 2 years that you could just plant right into it. So we'll see. I'll let you know. Pardon?
So
Did you? Well, yeah, this is about 1.5 feet when I took that photo, but it's shrinking, so I have to keep piling more on it, right? And then when, you might be able to see there's some little plants popping up here. So whenever you do see something fighting their way through the wood chips, you have to whack it off because, you know, you don't want it to be exposed to the sun and be able to photosynthesize. But it's supposed to, you know, make those plants struggle so much to get through. It's even supposed to kill bindweed. Believe it or not. I don't believe it yet, but we'll see. So next I want to go through just a few slides of what we actually harvest, some of the things we actually harvest from our food forest. And, you know, as I said before, we had to learn how to grow and eat some foods that are new to us. But I love this quote from Robin Wall Kimmerer from Braiding Sweetgrass. She says, "Knowing that you love the earth changes you, activates you to defend and protect and celebrate. But when you feel that the earth loves you in return, that feeling transforms the relationship from a one-way street into a sacred bond." So when we harvest, we try to keep that in mind. And we try to, you know, harvest in an honorable way, to approach with gratitude and with celebration. So we start in early spring by harvesting sunchokes. They're also known as Jerusalem artichokes. You know, some of you might be familiar with them. And it's a native sunflower. And I love this plant because it does fight off reed canary grass really well. If you ever have a patch of reed canary grass you want to put a warrior plant next to, try the Helianthus tuberosus. And the roots are crunchy and really good roasted, but I like them best fermented. I slice them up, put them in a crock, put some salt water, and somehow it makes it into more of a pickle, and they're easier to digest because some people have a hard time digesting these. In fact, one of the other names for it, of Jerusalem artichoke, is Jerusalem fartichoke. Just saying. So, and here's what we do with these rockets. We pull them out. We smother them. We get rid of them. And then the ones we can't get rid of, we eat because they're the first thing to green up in the spring. And they're really good at that stage. You can saute them in a pan with your favorite, you know, if you eat bacon, or I like onions and mushrooms, and they're really delicious. So what you can't get rid of in terms of weeds, you can eat them.
Do you eat them before or after they green?
Before. The earliest in the spring that they green up is the best time. And the later in the spring, when the weather gets warmer, then they'll start getting more sharp tasting because they're in the mustard family. Yeah. But in the early spring, they're very mild. And the earlier spring leaves of the cutleaf coneflower, or Rudbeckia laciniata, are also really good sauteed, cooked, or steamed. The Cherokee people call it sochan. It's a very well-known native green to many people, but I didn't know about it until recently. So I was just so excited that it was already part of our community with the butternuts. And after they flower in the summer, they'll send up a new flush of growth. So you could harvest them twice, in the spring and in the fall. And honewort is another great understory plant that you could eat the leaves raw in salads or cooked. I love when they start sending up their flower stalks before the flower buds actually form. You can harvest that and make really good broth, soup broth, out of it. It's got a little bit of a strong celery taste. This is one of the few non-native crops we have, and that's because a bird planted this. And it was in a kind of a thicket area closer to the road. And I didn't notice it until I saw the berries and I go, oh my gosh, it's a white currant. This is wonderful. So it becomes ripe in the early summer, around the same time as the black raspberries. Very tart, but you can make some jams, jellies, sauce, juice out of them. And yeah, here they are with the black raspberries, and elderflowers also bloom at the same time. So those are all things you could harvest. Elderflowers are used for a lot of different cool things. People make fritters out of them, cordials. They're good dried in tea as well, antiviral. And this is one of our favorite berries, aronia or black chokeberries. Have anybody here eaten aronia? Yeah. How do you like them, Jerry? Do you like them or?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I think probably everybody's eaten them and didn't know it.
Oh.
They're used commonly as a filler for fruit juice.
Oh, Jerry's saying that they're used in fruit juices for filler. Okay, I didn't know that. But some people really dislike them. They have a varied flavor. You could eat one berry off a bush and it's got great flavor, and then the second berry, it'll make you pucker. So they have a lot of tannins in them. People like to use them with sugar, but we love to eat them just straight. And they have many times more antioxidants than blueberries. So they're like the top of the charts when it comes to, cancer fighting and all those good things. This little boy was harvesting them and just stuffing his mouth. I mean, he loved them. He just loved them. But it's interesting because it's a native to the Midwest, and the Eastern European folk really get into it. It's grown widely as a industrial size crop in Eastern Europe, and it's used for jams, jellies, chewing gum, tea, juice, you name it. Here's a crop that I love. I mentioned how easy it is to grow, the sweetgrass. And I love it because I'm from Polish ethnicity, and it's also native to Poland. And in Poland, they put it in bottles of vodka. It's called żubrówka in Polish. And it's also called bison grass because there are a few bison left in Europe and they eat this grass. So it's a specialty in Poland, and the natives of this country use it for ceremony. So the bottom picture here is the braid that you can make. So I learned more about how to harvest it and braid it from that book, Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. And so I do it in a ceremonial fashion, and then I give these braids to friends of mine who are pipe carriers, and they use them to light the ceremonial pipe. So it's a wonderful crop. Elderberries are really easy to grow, and you could use them for tinctures, teas, either the flowers or the berries, juice. Another really good antiviral superfood. This year is our first crop of wild plums. So it'll be interesting to see how we process those. I've read that you got to take the skins off. So you got to smash them in a sieve because the skins are really tough and kind of sour or tart. But we'll see what we can do with the wild plums. And hazelnuts, we always share these with the critters. You could see here, they got to them first, but if you catch them before they turn brown on the outside, that husk, they're still turning their tan on the inside, you could kind of lift up the husk and peek. If, as soon as they start turning tan, you could grab some before the chipmunks and squirrels do. And then these are the pawpaws after they fall. They're kind of like mangoes in appearance and size, although they vary in size. And if you haven't tasted one, they taste like a combination of mango, banana, maybe a little pineapple thrown in, and a finish of caramel. So some people,
They're the only tropical fruit.
yeah, yeah, of that group.
And they probably planted by native.
Right, right. But before that, they were planted by the mastodons, right?
Yes.
Because they got big seeds that could go through their digestive systems. So, but the seeds and the skin are not good to eat. They'll make you sick. Just the ripe fruit. And then the last crop of the year usually is the butternuts that we harvest. And I'm still trying to figure out how to crack them. They are so hard to crack. I've tried different ways. If anybody's got any good ideas, I'm open to it because they are very delicious. But just to process a whole sack of them would take all winter if I used a regular old, like a vice, I need a really high quality nutcracker. But they are a lovely fruit. So this is the path going into the food forest, had the way it looked a few days ago. And every time we go down this path, we don't know what we're going to see. It's pretty exciting. So the adventure continues. And I'm also working on another food forest that I want to let you know about. And this is a project of the Land Conservancy of McHenry County. They were donated, given a piece of land that was in conventional row crops right outside or on the edge of Woodstock, the town of Woodstock. So this is a subdivision called Apple Creek Subdivision. And there's a little creek here. It's actually more like a drainage ditch in between the subdivision and the former cornfield. And so we're turning it into a agroforestry demonstration site that the community is being invited to be involved with. So earlier this summer, we planted a milpa garden, which is a traditional indigenous way of tossing a whole bunch of seeds in the ground and growing all them together. And Gina Roxas from the Trickster Cultural Center, she's Potawatomi ethnobotanist, and she came out and helped us do that. So we're having an open house next week, the 22nd, if you want to come out. You could, I'll give you more information about that. And it's really exciting to be part of because we got beavers in the creek. And we're working with the beavers rather than the farmers used to just trap them and kill them, but we want beavers. So it's quite exciting. So I'll just really quickly go through, recap some of the things we learned that we would recommend that if you want to grow a native food forest, you might consider doing. Define your vision and your time frame, how long you're willing to wait for something to bear fruit or nuts. Decide how large a forest you can manage, start small if you're not sure. Inventory what you got already. You might already have some food plants that you don't even know you could eat. Could work them in. Choose plants, of course, this, fit your soil, sun, and space. Plant your trees and your shrubs first, makes sense. But hey, if you got a small space and want to do it all at once, that would be a cool idea to try too. Put in the understory plants too. And then if you are doing the trees and shrubs first, you could plan your ground layer community to put in later. And whenever something changes, like a storm brings down a tree, or you decide, like we decided to cut down our carnelian cherry trees because we were afraid they were going to escape and become invasive in the natural area. So we we cut them down, and now we got more sun to work with. So that's the way forests work. It's succession. There's changes, there's surprises. And get ready for a deeper relationship with the earth because you're going to see some pretty exciting things going on.
Can you hold that up there for a minute so we can take a photo?
Sure. So with that,
Do we have?
we got some time for more questions. Yeah,
Lots of questions.
but if you would like to get in touch with us and ask more that you don't get a chance to ask tonight, we'd be happy to talk with you. You could reach us through smallwatersnfp@yahoo.com, and smallwaters.org is our website, and we're on Facebook as well. We have Small Waters Education Group. It's a private group. So thank you very much.
So let me ask, for those of you online first, if you have any questions. You can unmute yourself and just ask your question, or you can put it in the chat. Don't hear any. So, questions in the room?
What did you use for your source to decide what you could and couldn't eat, like on the pawpaw? You know, don't eat the seeds or the, you know, outside, yeah, I mean, what did you use for source?
I recommend a couple of different places and teachers for these native foods. Samuel Thayer, Thayer, is an author and a forager who has written 4 books and has the best information of any author I've ever read. He goes into great detail about when, how, you know, he just doesn't go into much detail about how to grow it, but how to harvest it, where to find it, you know, all those things you need to know. Another good place to go for information is, he's a chef and he's a forager. So he goes by the name of Forager Chef. All right, so he's on Facebook and TikTok and Instagram and everything. So look him up. His name is Alan Burgo. He's out of Minnesota. Another person who's got really great information and fun videos is Black Forager. She goes by Black Forager. Her name is Alexis Nicole. Oh, I can't remember her last name, darn. Sorry. But she's on TikTok and she's on Facebook, and her videos are a stitch, but all her information is great. So
Thank you.
sure. Yes.
How many years do you take the butternuts to start producing?
So the question is, how many years does it take for butternuts to produce?
That's one that I can't answer exactly. The trees that I bought were, when we planted them, they were already about 3 years old probably. And then it took, I think, 3 more years. Yeah, so it wasn't that long. But if you grew from seed, it would be a lot longer. Yeah, from a seedling. So, yes, Jack.
And the butternuts that we bought were grafted on like walnut.
Oh, yeah, and Jack is reminding me that, right, because of the canker, we decided to go with supposedly resistant varieties that were grafted onto a black walnut. So these were from, I wish they were still in business, a tree nursery in Kentucky. And they're not in business anymore. So I don't know if these are available anymore, but our trees all have the blight. One of them looks like it's really suffering. I don't know if it's gonna survive much longer, but the other 2 are looking fabulous, and one tree has an enormous crop on it. So I don't expect them to live, you know, a really long time, but I just wanted to try them and to see, and I'm still trying to propagate and not having too much luck yet. So if anybody, if you want some butternuts to propagate, you probably would have a better knowledge of how to do that than me, because I'm just trying my best and it's not working yet.
Any more questions? Jack?
When you harvested the Danes Rapids in the spring, did you put the Danes Rapid up too?
Oh, he's asking if I harvested the Dame's rockets to eat, would I pull out the entire plant as well? Actually, I didn't, because I was in a hurry to make supper. Okay. I was hungry, but I may have gone back at another time with a bucket and taken that same plant out. And there's plenty more where that came from, so I'm not too worried.
I
So,
would say that the question I was asked is, where do you know about what to eat and plant, you know? She does the research, but at some point on the game.
Jack is saying how I do research on what you can eat, and then I try it out on Jack to be the guinea
he
pig.
survived so far.
It's still here.
It seems as though I do really fine with the pawpaw. But if it's baked, some people have a bad reaction.
Sometimes baked pawpaw either just tastes a little weird to people, or sometimes they'll get a bad reaction, or the digestive system can't handle it.
I've eaten it once and it was fine, and the next time I got an upset stomach.
So,
I don't know.
I'm that way with mangoes. I can't eat mangoes.
okay, so yeah, well, anytime you try something new, just try a little bit at first.